Everybody, welcome back to Wicked Good Sports. This is At the Buzzer, and we're joined by Ryan Flynn. Ryan, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Brian. How about yourself?
Doing quite well. Excited to talk about the Celtics. Things got more interesting today surrounding the
Yeah,
Celtics, but we'll
definitely.
save that for the end. Or if you're
Yeah,
interested in a more in depth, check out our last video where we talked about Imadoka going to the Nets, no longer being the Celtics coach. But that's not really our problem, right? What's happening with the Celtics on the court?
yeah. Basically, since we last met, things pretty much immediately crashed. I think we met last Monday, right? That Bulls game was pretty
Yeah.
rough. I mean, we don't have to go too into it. We were up at
Mm-hmm.
one point by 18 in the first quarter.
Mm-hmm.
It got down to a 9 point lead, right? We ended up losing by 18 points.
Mm-hmm.
Tatum got Tatum got teed up, right? Maybe
Grant Williams
arguably
got thrown out.
thrown out. Joe Mazzulla got kicked out for standing up for
Mm-hmm.
Tatum when
Mm-hmm.
Tatum called out that Vooch kind of showed some anger and he didn't get called for a technical, which I thought was fair. I mean, the Grant
Mm-hmm.
Williams thing, he needed to be kicked out for that,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
yeah.
Whether
You
it
need
was
to be careful. Yeah.
whether it was intentional or not, it does kind of demonstrate a little bit of immaturity and just lack of self control in the moment. That right have been areas of concern for Grant in the past, even though he's
Right.
been great this year
Yeah.
as a player. So yeah, it's a tough loss, right? That's like kind of to me, those kind of games are like a one shot thing.
Mm-hmm.
It sucks, but it happens. Especially we've seen this with the Celtics team before. The concerns for me were like just the shooting of threes the whole time. Like we shot 48 threes, right? I think the Bulls only took 21, right?
Mm-hmm.
We still shot 30. We shot 37.5. They shot 47.6.
Mm-hmm.
But we were hitting them really well in the first quarter. That's why part of why we were up. A big reason.
Mm-hmm.
But when we stopped hitting them, we kept shooting them, right? And the Bulls are not a strong defensive team. Like we got to get it to the paint, right? We got to take easy shots,
Mm-hmm.
and that is definitely something I would emphasize with this team. Another thing that has just been ongoing for me, and it just does highlight, the lack of Williams or just a competent big in our rotation.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we just got out rebounded too. They had 15
Yeah.
more rebounds than us in that game, which is pretty significant.
Yeah, no, definitely. It was funny because we hyped him up so hard, and then immediately we both went to watch
Yeah,
the game that night, and they
yeah.
got smoked. But it's fine. We'll move on. We'll move on from that. So they lost their next game. What happened there?
So I'll start by saying I think I picked the Celtics over the Bulls.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I feel like probably a lot of times on here it might seem like I'm always picking the Celtics. I picked the Cavs for this game.
Right.
Not like gambling terms or anything, but
Mm-hmm.
anyone who asked me, I definitely picked the Cavs. I was still hopeful that Celtics could win. That's because I think this Cavalier team is really good,
Mm-hmm.
and also they have two really good bigs, especially on defense, and they're both very
Mm-hmm.
switchable, right?
Right.
So this is going to be difficult for us, when Rob Williams is out. I thought honestly they played, especially compared to the previous game, right? I think overall they played pretty well, right? It was a very close game.
Mm-hmm.
We really, we've kind of been this season. It seems like the first quarter we really seemed to take off. The second quarter really started to take off, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is kind of nice to see. There are obviously a lot of foul calls. Cleveland can also be very physical. What I didn't highlight about Cleveland that also makes them very good is their scorers, right? Their guards. Mitchell got 41 points, but also Karis LeVert, who's typically a bench player for them, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of their top players, Darius Garland, was out. And, LeVert got 41 points. So
Mm-hmm.
the two of them to get them, it's tough. And, like, a lot of their shots were actually in the paint, right? We took more threes and made more threes than they did. And I think the big thing that kind of highlights, kind of a lack of depth in our big rotation is I'm just going to say, so between Jared Allen and Evan Mobley,
Mm,
they got 22 rebounds, right?
mm,
And then between Tatum, Brown, and Horford, so that's our small forward up to our center, we only got 21. We got 17 rebounds
mm.
between those three. I mean,
Right.
that's not amazing
Right.
by any means. But
Yeah.
yeah.
So tough loss, but they did rebound. No pun. Sorry, but they did rebound in their latest game. Can you kind of walk us through that one and what it meant for the Celtics, considering they were kind of trending down?
Yeah, so I mean, this was a big game, right? Because obviously, like, we had that horrible loss against the Bulls, which could be seen as a fluke kind of a thing.
Mm,
But then we lost against the Cavaliers. Our defense just doesn't look anything like it did last year. I think we're 22nd
mm,
in defensive rating this year, which is a stark contrast to
mm,
being number one, right? Obviously, Grant Williams was, yeah, I should have mentioned that Grant Williams had missed the game before, so having him back definitely helped.
mm.
So this is definitely a game if we lost. I think there'd be more reason for concern. People would be like, "What's going on?" And I mean, the Wizards, albeit I've definitely been pretty down on the Wizards as is, right? I think a team having Bradley Beal as their best player
Mm,
is just spotty, but they've been scrappy this year. They've been better than expected for sure.
mm,
Uh, but yeah, we just took off from the beginning. I mean, right? We've been known for kind of having these great first quarters, and we had a
yeah.
19-point lead. Um, so overall, just a good shooting game. Bradley Beal played terribly. That definitely helped us a lot.
Mm,
We shot really high volume from three again, 47 attempts, 48 against the Bulls, but we had 44.7%. I mean, that's excellent.
mm,
Absolutely. What was the one concern for me primarily, we did uh, lose by 9 in the second half,
mm,
right? So that just kind of shows, like, again, like the game against Bulls, we fell asleep. Like, when we're up sometimes, we can kind of fall behind. That being said, Tatum and Brown really didn't play as many minutes as they had
mm.
against, like, say, Cleveland.
Right.
And I do think that shows good decision making in the sense, like, all right, we don't need to just stat chase with these guys, right? Yeah, like, you can settle for 23 points, 24 points,
Mm,
you know. So yeah, overall, I was happy with the win. I do want to point out we still had 5 less rebounds and 12 less offensive rebounds.
mm,
Given, like, they have Kristaps Porzingis, he's a good offensive rebounder. He's having a very good season, especially compared to where he's kind of been MIA for a bit.
mm.
Uh, but that's not really what you want. It does definitely highlight a need for more depth in our big rotation.
Mm.
But this team is, I think, playing as well as can be expected. We're
Right.
4-2. We've only chalk that one loss up to just, like,
It
sometimes we have
was
a bad game.
just yeah. It was like an avalanche, like when it
Yeah.
rains, it pours type of a thing.
And what I didn't really touch upon, not to kind of give the Celtics some leeway, is I did think, like, the technical on Tatum,
Mm,
just kind of, and I feel like there must have been something between the Celtics and the ref that's occurred over the past year, right? I don't know whether that's, like, in the playoffs last year, it was reported they were too physical.
mm-hmm.
They thought the Celtics were too argumentative. Um,
What?
but
The Celtics?
yeah, and that is another thing I would say. Like, even against Cleveland, I noticed it especially. Like, you just see Jaylen Brown, like, arguing with the
Jason
refs.
Tatum's also very, very
Yeah. Oh no,
argumentative.
very.
Yeah.
But I'm saying this is after all this is happening,
Mm.
right? This happened last game with Tatum. It's like, do you really think any good's going to come from it? I mean, that is
Right.
the one thing with
Yeah.
the NBA. It's like all this, like, why are you still arguing with the ref? And they're not even the
Mm.
worst. And I will say, I don't think Brown or Tatum are even, like, the worst culprits. I mean, have you ever seen Luka with the refs? He's pretty brutal.
Mm.
But it's just crazy. Yeah, actually, I did want to give one more shout out on that
Yeah.
last game. Malcolm Brogdon, he had 23 points in 23 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's settled into the bench role despite, having starter accolades for sure, really
Mm-hmm.
well. And yeah, personally, I would like to see him get even more minutes. Like you get him up.
Mm-hmm.
He's like definitely a bench player. He can get 30 minutes.
Right. Yeah. So overall, decent start to the season. Right. We started
Yeah,
hot, cooled off, but this is kind of where the Celtics want to be, and hopefully, like you said, that Bulls loss was more of a fluke thing. But you feel comfortable with the direction the Celtics are going in.
yeah. Ultimately, I feel pretty comfortable with the direction the Celtics are going in. We can't really count on anything with Rob Williams. However,
Mm,
I'm very hopeful you know, he'll have honestly a smoother turn. I'm not as worried as much as how quick he comes back. I just want him to be able
mm,
to come back
right.
and be able to stay healthy, right? So he can really make it down in the playoffs.
Mm,
Um, but yeah, ultimately, and I really do believe in this team. I think they've shown, like I said, they lost by 9 in the last game in the second half. They've shown they can kind of, play with their food a little bit, get a little careless,
yeah.
fall into some reckless tendencies. But they've shown ultimately that, they're capable of growing together and that they can persevere together.
Mm,
And I think you should absolutely still see this team as a serious playoff player, 100%.
yeah. No, I agree. It's been fun to watch them. Obviously, the losses
Oh,
haven't been
yeah.
good, but I would say the 4 wins have made up for the 2 losses for sure, and made me excited for the rest of the season. Um, Obviously, Imadoka, he is no longer with the team. We
Yep.
talked about it more in depth on the last episode, but is this kind of a good thing for the Celtics? Like maybe for the players and everybody, we can just move on. Like it sucks that it happened. It was a good run last season, but
Mm-hmm.
it's over now. Do you think this is kind of good for the Celtics from that point of view?
Um, I think it could be a distraction for
Mm,
sure. I think also if you look at the fact that Ma and this team really made an impact together. Last year, and Ma was given a lot of credit for that,
mm,
and like kind of their monumental moment was sweeping the Brooklyn Nets.
mm.
Uh, it is kind
Right.
of
Yeah.
so it is crazy that Ma is now going to be coaching the Brooklyn Nets, and you know Ma obviously had very good relationship with a lot of the players. But I think ultimately, yeah, I don't think it should be a distraction. And based on what I like, I'm looking at the leaders like Tatum and Brown. They've always kind of seemed pretty geared on basketball.
Mm,
They don't seem to really let the small stuff get to them
mm,
and the off the court issues, right? Like I know Tatum, especially like whenever he's interviewed, he's pretty much always going to just like focus on him playing. So
right.
I think, yeah, I think it'll be fine. I do think it could be a distraction. I think the Celtics, if they end up playing in the playoffs, a big if Brooklyn makes it,
Yeah.
I think they'll be pretty motivated to beat them for
Yeah.
a number of
February
reasons.
1st. The Nets are coming to the
Oh,
Garden.
okay.
What do you think the reaction will be to the Nets?
There's going to be a lot of booing
Yeah,
as usual. I mean, when we see that with Kyrie, we're going to see that with Ime.
yeah,
Um, I don't know. Personally, I try not to get overly involved in that
yeah.
end of basketball. Like it's such a tough thing with like Ime too. I don't know. It's like it's just something I wouldn't really want to touch.
Touch, yeah. No,
In
I
public there
get
because
you
it's
for
like
sure.
Marcus Kyrie. Like yeah, he was just an unpleasant. Could be an unpleasant presence on
Mm,
this Celtics squad. When he left the Celtics, he's got a history of going back and forth with the fans. I
oh,
get that. I mean,
yes, yes, yeah.
obviously, fans are going to react to it, but
Hmm.
I don't know. It's just a tough situation.
No, no doubt. As we said, you can read more about it in Ryan's latest blog for wickedeverythingsports.com. Also, the latest video we recorded. Ryan, anything else that we didn't mention that you wanted to mention on this episode?
I believe you may have already kind of subtly mentioned it. I've been posting on the Wicked Good
Yes.
Everything Sports blog. most recently, I did all my regular season predictions for the NBA. I also just posted an article
Mm-hmm.
about, Nash leaving the Nets,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of my thoughts on that.
Right. Yeah, definitely go check that out. As I said, it just posted, and yeah, some really great work breaking down where every team in both conferences will finish. So a lot of work. Go check those out. You can check. I will have more blogs eventually. I've just been very busy lately, but every week, well, most weeks, 7 out of 8 weeks so far this year, I've been doing my picks, and I'm starting to trend up. I've gathered the information of the NFL, see who's good and who's bad, and I'm starting to get my picks better. So go, go check out our blog. We can get everythingsports.com. Ryan, thank you so much for your time.
Rob, been a pleasure as always.
Absolutely. And yeah, you can follow the channel on Twitter at Wicked Good Sport or at WG Everything, Instagram Wicked Good Everything, Twitch is twitch.tv/Wicked Good Everything, and on TikTok, search Wicked Good Sports. Search Wicked Good Everything. We will see you in the next one.